Mr. Speaker, if I may, Evelyn's voice cut through the noise, steady and firm. Her palms rested lightly on the wooden desk in front of her, her eyes scanning the rows of suited figures. The chamber was restless, whispers crawling across, the seats like an untamed current. She didn't flinch. A man from the opposition bench coughed theatrically. "If you must, Miss Evelyn," he sneered, not bothering to hide the disdain in his voice. A few chuckles followed. Evelyn didn't react. Her gaze remained fixed ahead. "I stand here today not for recognition, not for applause," she began, her tone clear, as if speaking to an audience far beyond the walls of this chamber. "I speak for those whose voices are never heard in this room." Her words lingered, but before she could continue, another voice cut across. "Save us the lecture, miss. We've heard enough sermons from your kind," an older parliamentarian remarked, shaking his head with a smirk. There was a ripple of quiet laughter from a few corners of the room. Evelyn paused briefly, her heartbeat steady but heavy. She knew this rhythm well, the rhythm of being underestimated. She straightened her back. "I believe our constituents expect better than mockery," she replied, her voice even. Her eyes caught the speaker's for a fleeting moment, but there was no support in that gaze, only impatience. She pressed on. "We discuss policy while families outside these walls fight for survival. We debate numbers while children sleep hungry. My concern is not for position, but for purpose." As she spoke, the noise in the chamber ebbed and flowed. Some listened, some scoffed, and some simply waited for her to falter. "Perhaps," another voice interrupted, dripping with sarcasm, "Miss Evelyn would like to lecture us on economics as well? Or is that too advanced?" The comment stung more than she let show. Her jaw tightened for a second, but she kept her focus. She had prepared for this. She had grown in places where resilience wasn't taught in speeches, but in survival. "I understand economics well enough to know," Evelyn replied, measured and sharp, "that poverty isn't an accident. It's a policy choice." Her words silenced the murmurs for a breath's span. But silence, here, was brief. The speaker cleared his throat, a sign of closing patience. "Miss Evelyn, let's not stray into populist rhetoric. Stick to the point." Evelyn inhaled, steadying herself. "The point, Mr. Speaker, is that we have choices to make. Real choices, ones that affect real lives." Before she could finish, another interruption rose. "And choices include knowing when to yield the floor," someone shot back, met with quiet approval from their side. Her gaze moved across the faces before her, a sea of skepticism wrapped in tailored suits. Each interruption had chipped away at her composure, but she refused to let them see the cracks. Finishing her sentence with calm finality, she said, "I will yield the floor when justice yields to none." A momentary pause hung in the air, heavy with tension. The speaker adjusted his glasses and, with a dismissive nod, declared, "Your time has elapsed. Kindly take your seat." Without waiting for further acknowledgement, Evelyn gathered her notes. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes watching her, some amused, some indifferent, a rare few carrying quiet respect. As she stepped down from the podium, her steps were measured, her posture unbroken. Around her, muted whispers swirled like smoke, lingering in the chamber's air. Her heart drummed steadily against her chest, not with fear, but with fire. Outside the chamber doors, the cool hallway welcomed her. She exhaled quietly, her mind replaying every word, every smirk, every dismissal. Her hands clenched around her notes, but her resolve did not waver. The echo of voices faded behind her as she walked forward, her focus sharper than ever. Evelyn stepped into the street, the cool air brushing against her face. Traffic rumbled in the distance, voices layered over each other as people hurried past. She walked steadily, phone in hand, as messages continued to flood in. Her eyes scanned the screen, mostly headlines mocking her performance. Young parliamentarian stumbles in debate. Evelyn out of her depth? She muted the notifications without hesitation. The phone buzzed again, a familiar name flashing across the screen. She answered without breaking her stride. "Don't let them shake you." The voice of her old mentor Marcus came through, steady and warm. His tone carried the weight of experience, a grounding force amid the storm. "I'm fine, Marcus," she replied, though her voice betrayed a trace of fatigue. "No, you're not," he said simply. "But you will be." A small, almost invisible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. She knew Marcus never wasted words. As she crossed the street, a group of young women stood outside a community center holding pamphlets. Evelyn approached them naturally, sliding her phone into her pocket. They noticed her at once. Their conversation paused, eyes lighting up. "Miss Evelyn," one of them called out, her voice bright with excitement. "You're an inspiration," another added, stepping forward, genuine warmth in her tone. Evelyn's posture softened. "Keep pushing forward," she told them, her voice carrying a quiet conviction. "No matter who tries to silence you." They nodded eagerly, their admiration clear. Evelyn shared a few more words of encouragement before continuing on her way, leaving behind ripples of hope. But as she moved deeper into the neighborhood, she felt the shift. Some faces turned away. Others watched her with thinly veiled skepticism. Her phone rang again. This time it was a colleague from her party. "Evelyn, listen." The voice on the other end started cautiously. "You need to lay low for a while. Things are getting tense." She kept walking, pace steady. "I won't disappear just because they want me to." "It's not about them, it's about optics," he pressed, almost pleading. "They're framing you as a disruptor. Sponsors are pulling back. Leadership is uncomfortable." Her grip on the phone tightened, but her tone remained calm. "Then they never believed in the cause to begin with." The line went quiet for a beat before ending without farewell. Evelyn exhaled slowly, slipping the phone away again. She knew isolation would come, but feeling it unfold was a different weight altogether. A few blocks later, she found herself outside a modest cafe, its windows slightly fogged from the morning chill. Through the glass, she saw Marcus waiting, his hands wrapped around a ceramic cup. Inside, the warmth wrapped around her as she sat across from him. "You look tired," Marcus observed, setting down his cup. "I feel awake," she countered, managing a small, honest smile. He studied her for a moment before speaking. "They'll use everything against you. Your age, your skin, your roots. They'll call you unprepared, unworthy." She met his gaze steadily. "They already have." A brief silence settled between them, not heavy but thoughtful. "You've been fighting." "Since you could stand," Marcus reminded her, his voice low. "Southside wasn't easy on you. You climbed out of that, not with shortcuts, but with grit. Don't let them take that from you." Her memories flickered. The narrow streets of her childhood. Her mother working double shifts. The late nights spent under dim lights. Textbooks spread across the kitchen table. "I won't," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. Outside, a bus rumbled past, pulling her attention momentarily. Marcus slid an envelope across the table. "This came to my office," he explained. "No return address." She hesitated for just a second before opening it. Inside were copies of documents, names she recognized, powerful names, contracts, payments, signatures tied to policy decisions she had publicly questioned. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she sifted through the pages. "Corruption?" she asked, though the answer was already clear. "Deep-rooted," Marcus confirmed, "and dangerous." Her mind processed the implications swiftly. If she pursued this, it would be war. The same people laughing at her in Parliament would turn hostile in ways she couldn't yet predict. "And if I expose this?" she asked, her voice even. "They'll try to crush you," Marcus replied, no hesitation. "But if you stay silent, they win. Anyway." The weight of the choice settled on her chest, heavy but familiar. She folded the papers neatly, slipping them back into the envelope, her gaze lifted, steady and unwavering. "Then we don't stay silent." Marcus gave a slow nod of approval, pride flickering in his eyes. The hum of the cafe faded into the background as Evelyn sat back in her chair, her thoughts already aligning like pieces of a quiet, dangerous puzzle. She knew the risks, but she also knew the stakes were far greater than her own comfort. Outside the window, the city moved on, unaware of the decision that had just taken shape inside. The pages from the envelope lay spread across Evelyn's kitchen table. The small lamp above cast a narrow circle of light, leaving the rest of the room in soft shadows. Her eyes scanned every line, every signature, every number. She cross-checked dates, names, policy decisions that had once puzzled her in Parliament. Now they made grim sense. She reached for her phone and dialed. "I need you to see this," she said, the moment her ally answered. "Tonight?" came the cautious reply. "Tonight," Evelyn confirmed. Less than an hour later, Lena arrived, a sharp-minded journalist known for chasing truth where others feared to. "Look." She stepped inside, took one glance at the spread of documents, and set her bag down without a word. They worked side by side, voices low but urgent. Lena's fingers danced over her laptop as she pulled up old news articles, cross-referencing dates and decisions. Evelyn marked inconsistencies with a pen, lines stacking against the powerful figures they once assumed untouchable. "This isn't just policy manipulation," Lena murmured, scrolling through a web of connections. "It's personal gain disguised as public interest." Evelyn nodded, jaw tight. "And they've hidden it well. Well enough that going public will cost you," Lena added, her tone not cold but honest. "I know," Evelyn replied, her gaze not leaving the paper in front of her. The weight of what they uncovered wasn't lost on either of them. This wasn't a simple scandal that would pass in headlines and whispers. It would explode, and it would take casualties. Lena paused, studying Evelyn's face. "You're not obligated to carry this alone." Evelyn's response was quiet but firm. "But I am." The hours slipped by unnoticed. Reports piled up, names intertwined like roots of a tree grown in darkness. Evelyn mapped the connections, her determination sharpening with every discovery. At some point past midnight, Lena broke the silence. "You could walk away from this. No one would blame you." Evelyn finally looked up, her eyes steady. "They might not, but I would." She returned her focus to the evidence, tracing the path of corruption like a trail through thick woods. Her past came to mind. The long nights studying by candlelight, her mother's tired hands serving dinners at community fundraisers, neighbors who believed in her when she had nothing but conviction. She thought of the girls at the community center, their faces bright with hope. Of Marcus, who had fought his battles long before hers began. She thought of every voice silenced by power, and the idea of walking away felt heavier than the fight itself. Lena pushed her laptop toward Evelyn. "There's a way to leak this cleanly, through proper channels, legal backing, protection orders. But once you do, there's no pulling it back." Evelyn's fingers hovered over the keyboard, not from hesitation but clarity. She understood exactly what it meant. "I never expected protection," she said softly. "I only expected truth." They kept working until the first light of morning filtered through the curtains. Evelyn's eyes burned from sleeplessness, but her focus never wavered. As they compiled the final dossier, Lena spoke again. "You're brave, but bravery won't stop them from trying to ruin you." Evelyn offered a faint, tired smile. "Let them try." A few hours later, Evelyn stood before a mirror, fastening a simple pin to her jacket. Her reflection stared back, not proud, not afraid, just certain. She stepped outside, the early sun casting long shadows across the pavement. Reporters had begun to gather near the Parliament building, sensing the stirrings of something significant. Her phone rang. Marcus's name appeared. "Are you sure?" he asked without greeting. "I've never been more," she replied. A pause, then his quiet encouragement. "Then give them something they can't ignore." As she approached the steps of the press room, cameras clicked into focus and conversations hushed. Every face turned toward her, waiting for her next move. She didn't falter. No script in hand, no rehearsed lines, only truth and the weight of responsibility. Evelyn took her place at the podium, eyes scanning the crowd briefly. Some faces she recognized from past confrontations in Parliament, others from community meetings. All of them waited, the air thick with anticipation. She adjusted the microphone. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "Thank you for being here," she began. The flash of cameras continued, but she paid them no mind. "I have something to share with you. Not rumors, not speculation. Facts." The reporters leaned in, pens poised, recorders live. "I stand before you not out of anger, not out of revenge," she continued, her tone clear and unwavering, "but because integrity demands it." A murmur rippled through the room. "Documents detailing the misuse of public office for private gain will be provided shortly," she announced. "What you do with them is your responsibility. But I will not remain silent while corruption poisons our democracy." The moment hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Reporters fired questions, voices overlapping, but Evelyn held her ground. "This is not about me," she said over the noise. "This is about us." Her eyes met the cameras directly, as if speaking to every household watching. "Stand by for further details," she concluded, stepping away from the podium without theatrics, without dramatics, only resolve. As she exited the room, a flicker of determination burned brighter within her. She wasn't waiting for their permission to speak. She had already begun. The weight of Evelyn's words still hung in the air when the first wave of headlines broke. Across news feeds and television screens, her name dominated. Parliament scandal uncovered. Evelyn Taylor, courage or career suicide? In the press room, as promised, Lena distributed copies of the documents. Reporters scanned the pages with sharp eyes, questions fired between them faster than they could answer. Evelyn didn't flinch. She stood at the edge of the room watching the storm unfold. Voices clashed, theories flew, but beneath the chaos, a current of undeniable truth carried her forward. Outside, crowds had begun to gather, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Some held signs of protest, others of support, but most just watched, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. The following morning, opposition leaders took to the cameras with rehearsed outrage. "These are baseless allegations," one declared, his tone sharp, eyes narrowed behind polished glasses. "An act of desperation by a struggling member of Parliament." Another chimed in, more aggressive. "An insult to this institution and its traditions. We will not be distracted by fabricated scandals." But behind the confident words, Evelyn saw the cracks. She watched their forced smiles, the tightness in their voices. She had rattled the cage, and they were scrambling. Back in her modest office, Lena scrolled through public reactions. "They're calling you reckless," she reported, her brow furrowed. "And brave," Evelyn replied softly, eyes still on the news feed scrolling across the screen. Threats began to arrive, first as anonymous emails, then bolder, nastier messages sent directly to her office. Her team intercepted them, but she read, enough to know the cost of her stand. "They want you to feel fear," Marcus told her, meeting her gaze over a late-night coffee. "Don't give them the satisfaction." "I won't," Evelyn answered, steady. The smear campaigns followed swiftly. Old photos twisted out of context, her speeches clipped and edited to feed narratives she had never lived. Social media flooded, with doubts about her character, her qualifications, even her intentions. But alongside the noise, another current grew. On the streets, in quiet corners of the city, conversations shifted. At a market, A vendor recognized her, nodded with quiet respect. In a cafe, a young man left a note on her table. "Keep going. We're watching." Support emails trickled in, then grew, until her inbox was overflowing with messages from people she had never met, voices rising from communities that had long felt unheard. One evening, as she reviewed her notes for an upcoming interview, her phone buzzed with an unexpected caller. It was Gerald Lawson, a senior parliamentarian, respected by both sides, known for his caution and measured words. He had stayed neutral through the turmoil, his silence loud in a time of noise, Evelyn answered, keeping her tone neutral. "I've read everything," Lawson began without preamble. "Every page, every line." She waited. "I don't know what comes next," he admitted. "But I know this. The country deserves better than silence." His words carried no flourish, no grand announcement. Just truth. "Will you stand with me?" Evelyn asked, her voice steady. A pause, then, "Yes." The line went dead, but the impact lingered. The news broke within the hour. Lawson backs Evelyn Taylor amid scandal fallout. It spread like wildfire, jolting the narrative. Pundits scrambled to adjust their commentary, voters debated in crowded forums, and suddenly, the weight wasn't all on Evelyn's shoulders. Momentum grew, not in a dramatic wave, but in steady, undeniable steps. Interviews followed. Town halls filled beyond capacity. At every event, Evelyn spoke with the same clarity she had carried from the start. She answered questions directly, acknowledged risks, openly and never once overpromised. She stayed grounded in truth. Her team gathered late one evening, faces lit by laptop screens and shared determination. "People are asking," Lena said quietly, looking up from her notes. "If you'll run." Evelyn set her pen down, eyes thoughtful but clear. "They're not just asking," Marcus added. "They're hoping." She let the moment settle around them, the gravity of it both familiar and entirely new. "If I do this," Evelyn said, her voice calm, "it's not for revenge, not to punish them." "No," Marcus agreed. "It's to finish what you started." Her gaze swept across her team, tired, determined faces who had stood with her through storms. Without further hesitation, she rose from her chair. "Prepare the announcement," she instructed. Lena's smile was small but filled with purpose, already in motion. As the team moved into action, Evelyn stepped toward the window. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Lights flickered in office buildings, car horns sounded in distant streets. People moved about their lives unaware of the decision that had just taken shape. She watched for a moment longer, then turned away from the view, her steps purposeful. There would be no turning back now. Evelyn stepped onto the makeshift platform in the heart of a crowded park. The autumn air carried the sound of hundreds of voices, some cheering, some curious, some simply present. She didn't try to command the noise. She let it surround her, alive and unscripted. Her eyes moved over the crowd, picking up faces that reminded her of where she had started. The older woman in the front row with a child bundled in her lap. The group of young students holding handmade signs, their ink smudged but their intent clear. The factory worker with calloused hands, standing silently but attentively. When she spoke, her voice was steady, familiar. "I know you've heard promises before," she began, skipping past grand openings. "You've been told change is coming, but change never comes unless we carry it ourselves." There was no practiced rhythm, no rehearsed crescendos. Just her and them. As she moved through towns and neighborhoods, she kept her pace personal. Evelyn shook hands not for cameras, but for connection. She listened more than she spoke, nodding as people shared stories of lost jobs, closed schools, and forgotten promises. Her opponents rushed to recover ground. Ads flooded screens, plastering her image with accusations and doubts. Commentators speculated relentlessly. Some predicted her rise as a temporary flare. Others began to wonder if history was quietly shifting. Debate night arrived without ceremony. Evelyn walked onto the stage as if walking into any conversation. She didn't glance at the audience or the cameras. Her eyes settled directly on her rivals, her posture neither defensive nor aggressive, simply open, prepared. Questions came sharp and fast. What qualifies you to lead this country? Her reply was clean, without hesitation. I've lived the policies others have only written about. Another challenge. How will you unite a nation divided by distrust? By listening, she answered plainly. And by doing what we say we will do. There were no soaring speeches, no dramatic flair. But as the debate unfolded, something shifted. Her calm certainty didn't just hold. It grew. The audience leaned in. Rivals lost their footing, their rehearsed lines sounding thin against her grounded truth. By the time the moderator closed the final round, Evelyn's voice had become the room's quiet center. Not loud, not showy, but unshakable. In the days that followed, the ground beneath her campaign grew firmer. Rallies swelled. Volunteers flooded her headquarters. On street corners, strangers discussed her policies with surprising familiarity. Her message, simple as it was, had found a home in the hearts of many. The night of the election arrived without spectacle. Evelyn sat with her team in the modest headquarters they had never bothered to upgrade. Screens flickering as results trickled in. No one spoke much. The tension lived in the space between glances, in the tightness of crossed arms, and the tapping of anxious fingers on tabletops. Lena watched the numbers, her breath held quiet. Marcus paced slowly by the window, looking out. Now and then, as if the streets themselves might reveal something. Evelyn sat still, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the screen, but mind somewhere deeper. When the final precinct reported, there was no explosion of noise, no sudden eruption. Just a soft, collective exhale as her name appeared next to the word that carried the weight of every step they had taken. President-elect. For a moment, no one moved. It felt like the pause after a long-held breath, uncertain if it was safe to let go. Then Lena smiled, a quiet, genuine curve of her lips. Marcus, usually a man of few visible emotions, allowed himself a small nod, his eyes glassy under the dim lights. Evelyn stood slowly, not rushing the moment, not letting it sweep her away. "We have work to do," she said simply. The crowd outside grew louder as news spread. Horns honked in celebration. Voices rose in waves of unexpected joy. People gathered not because they were told to, but because they wanted to share in the moment they never thought would come. Later, she stepped onto the stage built quickly in front of headquarters. Lights flooded her face, but she focused on the people, not the cameras. Her speech was brief. "I didn't come here to be a symbol," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "I came here because we have things to fix, because you deserve better than broken promises." There was no applause line, but the people clapped anyway, moved not by theater, but by truth. She continued, "Tonight isn't an ending. It's not even a beginning. It's just a step, one we take together." When she left the stage, the night still buzzed with energy. Reporters pressed for statements. Supporters reached out with hands and words of congratulations. But she moved through them quietly, her mind turning toward what lay ahead. Hours later, long after the streets had emptied and the lights had dimmed, Evelyn sat alone in her office. The envelope that had started it all still rested on her desk, edges worn from handling. She ran her fingers over it once before setting it aside. Her gaze shifted to the window where the city stretched out, alive with the ordinary hum of life. In this quiet, she felt not victory, but responsibility, deep and grounding. No fanfare, no dramatic weight, just the simple truth of the path ahead. She thought of her mother, of Marcus, of the young women at the community center. She thought of every voice that had once been silenced, now rising in chorus. A soft breath escaped her lips, not of relief, but of resolve. "We carry this together," she whispered, not to herself, but to the journey ahead. And then, with quiet certainty, she rose to her feet, ready for the next day.